Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Accuracy in America. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, and of course those dog-faced phony soldiers.
That's right. That's right. Little weather in here. So it was a little chilly this morning. So we
Down
still
in the
got this
30s.
little, April is not quite fully giving us, nice, really spring weather every day, but it's going to be pretty nice.
Yeah,
I can get out there. I always kind of want. How's your golf game these days? You've been
yeah. I'm getting some opportunities now. Down in the 30s last night. It's supposed to be 90 tomorrow and Friday here in DC.
Woo! Okay, yeah, I didn't look that far ahead. That's hot.
Yeah, that's hot. And then rain on Saturday. But then the rain is kind of the big story there because we're about half of normal rainfall for this time of year so far. We're very dry, and part of the reason for that is like right at the end of the winter, we've been under I think La Nina. I always get confused on which is which for like the last 4 years. And as soon as winter ended, as soon as it gave us this one last mild winter, it's like we're done. It's out of here. It's being replaced by the other one, El Nino, which is the water is colder, right? The water goes from being warm off the coast of like Peru to being colder. And this dictates our weather patterns, pretty strongly. So the last time that this happened was like 2002. And we had a very dry spring, early spring, this time of year then too. It was the last time it was this dry. And that following winter then with all those new factors in place was quite severe. So we could be setting up, we're talking in April here, but we could be setting up for a pretty tough winter coming up.
Oh no, don't tell me this. I may actually have to use that snowblower my son got me last year.
Yeah, I know. I'm not looking forward to it, but it could be there. It could happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely drier conditions. I've cut my grass a couple of times already, but it hasn't been so high that it leaves like a ton of clippings that I got to rake up and things like that. So it's been nice to be able to kind of maintain things. But I was surprised, so maybe you get the same, maybe if you've seen, if you've got Alexa at home, it sometimes gives you these National Weather Service reports, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm like, okay, what are you telling me today? And it would be like, red flag warning for 5 Maryland counties, including Montgomery County, because of the dry conditions. And I'm like, what? You're telling me we're so dry and with the winds that it's a potential fire threat?
Fire hazard here too, all over Northern Virginia too.
Yeah, I'm like, whoa, this is something I don't even really recall happening. I was kind of thrown for a loop by that. I just associate this kind of thing with the West, not here.
Yeah, but we're there right now. So.
Yeah, wow. Okay, well that's interesting. You are definitely the weather. Maybe you got all this stuff down here on the weather. That's good. I don't want to hear a potentially harsh winter. I hope that you are dead wrong.
Yeah, I do too.
But time will tell in another 7 or 8 months or whatever it is.
And we're due for It's been a while since we've had a good tough winter here.
Yeah, it's I'm not. Yeah, okay. I'm going to hope for a decent summer and then worry about the winter when it comes, hoping that everything you said is false.
Okay.
I don't know. Who knows? You're probably going to be right, and I'm going to have a miserable winter. So
I'm fine with "I told you so" next April 19th. I can tell you that. I told you nothing happened. I'm like, okay, good.
We'll rerun this.
That's right.
All right, I threw this in here on the list just because yesterday was tax day. Normally would have been Monday because April 15th was Saturday, but DC has their Emancipation Day, so it always gets pushed back for a day. I don't know. I mean, it's the taxes are still out there. It's still a burden for a lot of people. I never like paying the IRS or the Maryland state government, but at least this year I don't know. This year I guess I owed the Fed some money, but I overpaid Maryland, so it's going to be somewhat of a wash. But yeah, I don't, the tax system still stinks to me. And the more I go through it the last couple of years, the more I think like, that whole flat tax, kind of thing just sounds a lot more appealing than having to go through all these IRS forms.
The simplification would be really good. Some stuff on the taxes. So I guess Marjorie Taylor Greene was on 60 Minutes.
That's true. Yeah, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah,
she's on there with Leslie Stahl, and she says it's not a spending problem. We're doing fine on spending. We're collecting plenty enough money. It's like we need to look at the spending side. And Leslie Stahl says, well, that's kind of glib, like, you're not trying to solve the problem. Well, here are the facts. In 2021, we collected about 9% more in tax revenue than we ever had before as a country. This is the Trump tax cuts are kicking in, right? There's all this additional investment and people working and stuff. And so the government's starting to make a ton of money on that. In 2022, we broke that record by nearly 12%. And you think about your revenue record for the year busted in 1 year over year by 12%. So, we're taking in tons and tons of money, but we're also spending tons of money, right? And, it's mostly at this point, the biggest expenses are the, healthcare, right? We've decided that, we're going to provide healthcare for, about 30% of the country. And, the number will grow as much as we allow the left to grow it, right? But that's the expense, healthcare and pensions, right? And you're not spending a lot on pensions, so it's mostly healthcare. So, that's about $850 million a year. It's about $100 million or more than we spend on defense, which, now looks like that may not be enough. So, the thing is to get a hold of spending. And, part of it is, the Department of Defense can't pass an audit, right? The Pentagon can't, they've tried it. It's terrible. So, the Pentagon they've fought, for each service, right, has fought its own budget battles and so forth, and you're fighting against the other services for defense dollars. And so, at some point, that needs to be dealt with, because that has led us down a path to where, it's a contest to who gets the most money, and the money is not necessarily accountable or well spent. So, we need to look at where we're spending our money and do a better job of it. I think all governments are in that position from time to time. But we're to a point where it's, there's some big ramifications if we don't start taking it seriously.
Yeah, no, I definitely know when the Trump tax cuts, came in there, because for me and my, my less than middle class income, I actually got caught in the salt trap because of the property taxes.
Right.
So I lost deductions. I think for 2023, I'm actually, because everything is dropping so much for me, that I'm actually going to benefit by those for the first time in years. But all those kinds of things, like I lost out. I've been giving the government more money the last few years than I would have had to do in the past. And that's just the way it works out. But you're right. What I had down here is was reported the other day that, through the end of March, the government has a $1.1 trillion deficit.
Right.
The fiscal year doesn't end until September 30th.
Yeah. So that's every 3 months you're going another trillion into debt.
Yeah. So where's, what's missing from this too is, right, is you remember how Joe Biden used to talk about bringing down the deficit and all this stuff. We had all that, COVID spending and all that stuff like this, and all this, the administration goes, definitely silent, when it comes to gas prices and the deficit, when things turn the other way. Both things are not going their way. Right. Inflation is not really going their way either. And so they're pretty silent about these kind of economic, successes that they had before, because, we're heading to a massive, deficit by the end of September. And the administration is just going to kick that away. They don't want to address that at all, but they're spending a ton of money. You mentioned healthcare. As a result of, my flip side on income and stuff like that, I'm now in the Obamacare Maryland exchange. I benefit that. I'm still a taxpayer, but I'm in essence subsidizing my own healthcare, and everything. We had turned over our, given our health broker, insurance broker's name to a friend of ours who, divorced mom, woman there. She moved to Delaware this past year, and she has very little income. She had a settlement with her husband and whatever, her ex, but herself, she has to live off of that settlement, those investments. And, she takes, she has maybe a little job here, a little job, there, but, makes very little money. She had told my wife that as a result, her health care, through the exchange is like $50 a month.
Wow.
And she was paying before she went into that. I think she was paying well over 700. So she's benefiting. I mean, in a way, she's paying for it because every taxpayer is subsidizing everybody on an exchange, because you're basically buying down all of that insurance. The insurance company's not charging less.
No. It's like anytime you want to go up on the fees and all that stuff, you want corporate taxes, right? That's stick it to those corporations, make them pay their fair share. What will the corporation do to raise that money? Right? There's a 100% chance that it will go up on the prices, right? They're not just going to say, we'll take, you go up on our taxes 7%. We'll just be 7% less profitable this year. Who cares? That's not the way it ever works. So, every time they talk about sticking it to corporations, they're sticking it to you.
Yeah.
Right? You pay all the taxes, all of it.
Yeah. I mean, there was a thread on our next door here this past week. Somebody had complained about, the tipping, what they call the tipping culture, kind of gotten out of hand, where everywhere you go, there's a tip jar.
Yeah.
Even if they're not serving you at a table, even if it's food that you ordered, online and, and stuff like that, there's always, there's a tip jar. Or, if you're paying, using a device that's through Square or Clover, whatever those, they try to say, here's your mountain, and do you want to leave a tip? And you can go to zero and then sign off on that and just settle your bill. But there's this kind of inherent little pressure, and people going back and forth. And there's there's a few people out there. It's like, well, if you pay people a living wage, you wouldn't have to worry about this. It's like, what's happened since the pandemic? Fast food workers are getting well north of $15 an hour now, right? A lot of times, $18, $20 an hour. There's so much of this upward pressure on spiraling wages. The Walmarts, the Costco's, all paying a lot more money. But they're not just absorbing that out of the goodness of their hearts. You and I and everybody who walks through those doors is paying for it.
That's right.
Everything is increased. So, I mean, we go to we use Cafe Rio, food is pretty decent, but the way they run their rewards programs and stuff like that, it kind of encourages you to repeat visits and all kinds of stuff. And I was just looking at my receipts from a few months ago. I'm like, okay, pre-pandemic, they used to do a taco, what they call Tasty Tuesday, and they used to sell burritos for $5.99. That's when burritos were going for like $8.50 maybe, or something like that. Then they bumped them to a $6.99, then $7.99, and then they eliminated the special on that and went to Taco Tuesday, half price tacos, and just let the price of the burritos. But ingredient cost of everything that goes in the burrito was going up. The labor costs were going up. So the burritos are now $12.39. But in the last 8 months, the price of the burrito has gone up about a little over 5%, which is a little over 7% annualized. These costs are real. I mean, we were used to 2% inflation or thereabouts. We're still, this food inflation is still there. It's just not going away on us, right? And so as a result, we've gone a little dark.
Yeah. There we go.
So, it's out there, and the administration does not know what to do about this.
Right. But that comes up with a lot with these guys. It's like that, that Chinese balloon, right, flew over the country for like a week, and they never did anything. They're like, oh, we're just going to wait till it gets off the coast. And then it's because you didn't, for 3 days, you didn't have a clue what to do, right? When they arrested Trump, right, the administration, they got all these, the media's like, oh, they're being smart, being high-minded, not commenting on this. They hadn't thought of what to say, right? They had plenty of comments once they sat down and thought about it a while, but they're not ready for anything. And they get caught a lot. Just things take them completely by surprise. Like the other one that's coming up pretty soon is, I guess May 11th, all the border restrictions come off. You don't have to have a COVID jab to get back in the United States anymore. It's going to be, they're talking about, tens of thousands of people are waiting on May 11th to cross the southern border. There's no plan for that. There's no what are we going to do about that? Where will we put these people? Will we process them? Will we let them in? Is there any effort to stop them? None of that. Just it's creeping toward. And they're just like, what do we do? Right. So I'm hoping when we get whoever ends up running against Biden, right? Assuming it will be Biden, assuming that he makes it that far, just say competence all the time. Look at all the things they screwed up and had no idea what to do about. Because to me, that's a winning point, right? They can't squirm out of that. There's so many things they can't answer for.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing too, I wanted to mention here before we move on, it's just, and you spurred me on here because of all these moratoriums that are going off, all the COVID related, things that are ending, eviction moratoriums, and right. as well as the Medicaid qualifications, right? But boy, you would think, from the left, from the liberal media, that this is some horrific thing here now, that all these programs that have, where we piled on people to Medicaid without having to qualify for Medicaid, all these expenses, right. And then you prevented people from getting evicted, and now you've got CNN running these sob stories about people in eviction courts. It's like, the government gave everybody a bunch of money. They let you stay in these places. You've had all this time. What's the problem here?
Right. Right. When it came off, you were like, I'm just going to keep riding the gravy train. And they, that wasn't offered. Right. You took advantage of some. You're like, they counted on the politicians to back down. Well, they're not in position to not back down now. The other COVID one is, I don't know if you saw this the last day or so, FDA has said, you don't need any more jabs. Forget additional jabs. Just let it go. It's like if you've got one bivalent or whatever, you're good. You don't need, adding more, not going to do any good. So, I mean, they're quietly admitted that this doesn't keep you from getting COVID and doesn't really work.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's what is it? They're saying there's one shot that's approved or whatever. That's all you may need.
One shot, one time.
Yeah.
Is all that is approved anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And they say, if you've got one, don't come back.
Yeah. So I just had some friends that I just saw on Facebook. She says, we went in for our fourth, shot. I'm like, why?
Why? What are you doing? What are you afraid of? Everybody else is living through it.
Yeah. Were you not fine after you got your third shot? Perhaps?
Right.
What made you feel?
What do you think is going to happen? Are you sitting there going, "Hit me"?
Yeah. I mean, they just got their fourth shot. I mean, what is the deal? I mean, I love these people dearly, but I'm like, come on, give me a break.
Yeah, work a little math, yo.
I don't know. All right, couple things here. So the Russians arrested this Evan Gershkovich, the Wall Street Journal reporter, charged him with espionage. They just had this kind of court hearing. This was, they're not backing down on that. But, stuff that we're kind of typical. We're not exactly surprised at. And then we also had the arrest of this guy Jack Teixeira, supposed to be the leaker of the intelligence documents. What's your feeling about these things that have happened here?
All right. Well, Gershkovich is he's like Brittany Griner. He's a political prisoner, right? He may have done some little technical thing wrong, but it's that he wouldn't be in this trouble if the Russians weren't trying to smite the Biden administration, right? That's pretty clear, and hopefully the cooler heads could prevail. They've let the ambassador talk to him. There's a lot of people making pleas on his behalf. Hopefully something good happens there. Teixeira, so this guy, he appears to have been, his intent appears to have been to like he was in a group of guys who were gamers, and there was people that were they got to talking, they got together, they were all sitting at home during the pandemic, and so they were like gave each other some friends to talk to during the pandemic. Well, as it goes on, this guy starts like, you guys don't realize how bad things are, well, how bad things are there, Mr. Teixeira. You check this out, right? And so he told them about it for months. He's like, the government's doing this, the government's doing that. And then finally he said, I'm trying to warn you guys about stuff, and no one's reacting to it. I get no response on my tweets. Here are the actual documents I'm getting this from. Read this, see what you think, right? And so, it's like all this stuff. It starts out with 1 and 2, and then, he doesn't get caught. That's the other thing is like, this is months and months. This stuff is, quote, in the wild, as the intelligence people say, and no one knew it. No one realized it. It was available on, anybody with a computer who knew where to look could just go and get it, right? All this American classified information. So, what he did, I don't, his intent, he's certainly not among the worst spies in American history. It looks like he was just talking to his friends and, sharing information he shouldn't have shared. But the information was pretty critical for what, and also like, in some cases it shows that U.S. intelligence, which we kind of all suspected, often doesn't know what it's talking about. For instance, this town in Bakhmut in Ukraine, right? They've been fighting over this town for months now. And this guy is like, the intelligence, one of the things that he revealed was a document that said the U.S. intelligence community says Bakhmut is lost and Ukraine will never prevail and they're wasting money to try, right? And then, they interviewed the guy who is the head of the Wagner group, right? The people who in Russia, they get people out of prisons and insane asylums and put them on the front lines to fight, right? And this guy runs that. And he's like, anybody that's telling you that we're about to win a quick victory in Bakhmut doesn't know what he's talking about, because we're entrenched here. We're going to be fighting for this city for a long time. So our intelligence, the intelligence that Teixeira stole, was, the Russian fighting it doesn't agree, right? It would favor him to say that he was, he's correcting the record of our intelligence, right? So, but there's a lot of stuff out there, they're not well supplied. That's probably true. If we really want to make the commitment to making sure they don't lose, we're Americans. A lot of American people are thinking that we're spending too much on this now. But if we want to do it for the long term, it's going to cost much more than we are spending now.
I mean, isn't Teixeira, isn't he like 21 years old?
Right, right. That's another thing that came out. So, yeah, he's 21 years old and he's got access to all this stuff. And so there were, when all this came out, I was reading this thing on Twitter and it was like, how does a 21-year-old have this much clearances and access to all this stuff? And I mean, like 10, 15, 20 guys come in and say, I was 18 and I was looking at top secret stuff, and I was 19, I was 18, I worked for a general when I was 19, I was sitting in the room for such and such a briefing at 18, so it turns out we have a lot of teenagers, who know all the biggest, baddest secrets in the U.S. Intelligence community. What could go wrong, right?
Yeah. and he used, and he was on Discord. He used Discord, which is very popular with gamers and others in the tech side, to disseminate the information. It's like, yeah, what can possibly go wrong with giving these young people access to this stuff? And how do they allow it to get out? What does this say about our intelligence community to allow this to happen anyway?
And then go on for months and months and months. Right before someone finally said, sent it to the wrong person who went, what the hecky, right? So it's crazy what's going on. That's another thing where, our administration is just inept, right? The national security team is a joke. Defense is a joke, right? We'll be lucky to make it through this.
Yeah, I've always been led to believe that. In the general sense that people in the intelligence community, I mean, they're tight-lipped, they're locked down in a sense. Nothing ever can really get out, unless there's something really nefarious purpose, and they find the hole to get it out of there, and you have to make a concerted effort to do so, and everything like this. And then you find out that it's not necessarily the case. I mean, we've got issues with our intelligence community about how this material is handled, and how it's locked down and kept out of the hands of people, so people can't do the stuff this guy does. This is shocking.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Like what he got away with, and and there's probably more out there like him.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to shift to Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump and Disney in Florida and stuff like that. So,
Okay.
Ron DeSantis has been he's been the champion there to take on Disney and get back against the kind of the woke politics and stuff like that with Disney. Their previous chairman, who took over for the retired chairman, he got into some hot water, about the mislabeled "Don't Say Gay" bill and stuff like that, and then wound up losing his job. The former chairman came back and has been battling with Bob Iger's been battling with Ron DeSantis ever since. And there was a big fight over the Reedy district, improvement district. The group of people who basically were appointed and controlled by Disney to basically say, okay, you want to expand your air rights in your land and expand Disney, in Florida and things like that, go ahead. They took care of the taxes, supposedly, et cetera, et cetera. DeSantis managed through the legislature, they dismantled that and started to create their own board that would try to hold Disney more accountable. But Disney kind of did a little bit of an end run there, so to the point where, DeSantis is going to fight them about some of the things that they did, and kind of even threatened to maybe I'll build a prison nearby, which was pretty funny. But then you got Trump coming out there, and he's basically come out on Disney's side, which seems to be really for Trump, just because Ron DeSantis is fighting Disney, I'm going to support Disney.
Well, so a few things there. So, so DeSantis went after them after they opposed the "Don't Say Gay" bill, right? And they have this Reedy Creek Improvement District where they basically manage their property, sort of. It's like as its own county, so to speak, right? They have their own roads budget and infrastructure processes and so forth, and there's a lot of people who live there, right, on Disney and on the campus and so forth, and so they manage all that. So DeSantis was going to take that away and have it managed by those counties. People in those counties, that's like Osceola County, right there on the side of Orlando. They were like, well, that's a lot of stuff we suddenly have to do. We're not experts at. So there was some back and forth on that. Then Trump has gotten involved. Trump has said, you're messing with a lot of certainty over something. Who cares what they say about the "Don't Say Gay" bill? You have a super majority in the legislature. Why are you fighting them over this, right? And so now they're in a situation where DeSantis, as you said, he appointed another board, right? But before that board could take office, the old board passed a number of resolutions that essentially defanged the new board, made it unable to take action on the things DeSantis was trying to do. So now he is trying to get legislation through the legislature there in Florida, which I'm sure he'll be able to do, just counting those votes, right, that were taken there in the waning days of the old board service before the new board took over. So he'll be able to go through with what he did. Now, a couple of things on this. So DeSantis, he did this. He just decides, a company opposes the bill, so I'm going to wipe them out, right, or bring them to heel. The prosecutor of Tampa, Hillsborough County, which is Tampa, says that he doesn't agree with how DeSantis wants to enforce abortion law, so he fires the prosecutor. Now, as a conservative, I'm completely pro-life. So, I want pro-life laws enforced to the hilt, right? I think the legislation that they were fighting about, I'm on DeSantis' side of that legislation, right? I think that the parents are right to be retaking control of schools and saying, let's get this filth out. We don't need to be talking about, all this perverted stuff to 6-year-olds, right? I'm totally with them on that. But when you say, how much executive power a governor has, then I start thinking, okay, we're now under the boot of evil people with executive power in Washington. So, do we want to, will our dictator will be less bad than their dictator? Is that really what we're selling? No, we're selling that we follow the rules, that we go through the process. If Ron DeSantis wants to get rid of the prosecutor in Hillsborough County, he needs to run a candidate against him and back him and support him and campaign for him and get him elected, right? He's capable of doing that. And he's very, he won by 20%, right? So, do that through the process, right? But if the voters put that guy in and you're taking him out, right? And then the voters, have gone along with this Reedy Creek deal for, 50 years, right? It's not brand new stuff, right? And then, to say, okay, I'm smarter than them. Yeah, that's right. There's some balance, right? It is required, right? So we're now doing things as bad as them to get back at them for the bad stuff they're doing. So, to me, it's a little like he has some stuff to learn about process, and it would be scary to see that guy president, right? Because he has a penchant. He's demonstrated a penchant for executive uses of executive power that a lot of us, including me as a conservative, would find questionable.
Yeah, I mean, I won't say that I agree with everything that DeSantis has done or the way that he's done it. I mean, just because you don't agree with this guy, you can't just fire him. I mean, I think he was duly elected. You can run somebody against him and do this because, as you say, as a conservative, I mean, we're always, complaining about the liberals when they do stuff like this. And we have talked, I think, numerous times on this show that we don't agree that our side should copy their side, the other side, and do the same thing. That's not who we are. That's not our principle.
We're supposed to be better, right?
Yeah, we're supposed to be better.
We're here for.
Yeah, we're supposed to be better, and that goes for everybody. I mean, so I don't like when that happens. I mean, that's why I kind of struggled, with the whole thing that happened in Tennessee, is that, okay, those guys, were jerks, joining the gun, all that stuff, and they did disrupt. They were the decorum of the house there in Tennessee and whatnot. But it was to me, it was kind of goofy in a way, because so you expel them, you create this whole big scenario for that. But they get reappointed. I mean, that was a fait accompli. So right. I was like, what were you accomplishing there? I couldn't quite, it's like,
right. You didn't make them heroes. You overpunished them, right? I mean, that I understand you punishing them. I could see sanctions. I could see, in the House they have something called take down your words, where they strike whatever you said offensive from the record, and you can't speak for a day. You could have done something. You can't speak for. You can't speak for the rest of the session. You can't be recognized. You can't be on your committees, right? They're still in the House. Their voters are still represented. They still cast votes on the floor, right? So, I mean, there was a lot of layers of things they could have done short of expelling them for what turned out to be, 3 days or whatever. You essentially made heroes of them. It's handled terribly, from a political standpoint. And and again, I don't agree with them or what they did at all, right? And I know that there's, conservatives are out there saying, y'all mistreat us, therefore, you got it coming. And it's like, the idea is to get past tit for tat and to get past, using government power in thuggish ways, right? That's what we are against. And that is what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, they became known as the Tennessee Three, and they're kind of like, oh, please give me a break. Nobody knew who these people were for the most part outside of Tennessee until they did this.
That's right.
It's like, thank you for botching that whole thing up and showing that you are no better than the other side in the way they treat us. This is just the wrong thing. I don't know what it's going to take for people on our side to kind of learn that. It's just that, I don't want to say necessarily that it's absolute power corrupts absolutely, but they're moving in that direction. They think that they've got all this power and they can just go ahead and do this, and it's stupid. It is
Right.
absolutely stupid to
Right.
do this. And you'll they would win a lot more support, if they follow rules. I mean, go ahead. Yeah, if they have those rules like you were just mentioning, go ahead, and put those rules there and say, well, you can't speak for a day, you can't do this. But that whole expelling process did absolutely nothing. It elevated them. It made them kind of martyrs and national heroes to the left, and that's not, that totally, blew the whole thing of what they were trying to do.
And that was their first and only choice.
Yeah.
Right. No one ever thought about, let's suspend them for a week, or let's kick them off their committees,
Yeah.
or let's defang them without kicking them out. They're still here. You're still in the legislature, but you're punished an appropriate amount for an act that was, inappropriate. Right.
Right.
You get fair punishment for what you did.
Yeah,
right?
I like what you just said too about the removing, because we've seen removing committee assignments, right?
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I mean,
Yeah.
if your behavior constitutes something like that, that's, you're still a member of the House, or the body. You just don't have that assignment because of your behavior or whatever you did
Right.
that
And
violated.
you're less effective, and I'm fine
Yeah.
with that, because like your opponent, in your next election should be able to go and say, hey, this guy puts on crazy shows in the Capitol and gets himself kicked out of positions where he could be helping our district. Right. I'll go there and conduct myself properly and not get kicked off my committees. And that could be a good one. Yeah, that's right. Because what happens is the precedents get established. Like, look at Jerry. Yeah, that's true. That's right.
I know this has bothered Spencer a lot.
Yeah. But I mean, you look at how this is handled in the past, right? And there's next to no precedent on this, right? They had kicked people out of the legislature, but it was for criminal conduct, like adjudicated in the courts, established by others, criminal conduct, right? It was, there's never been a, you argued too hard for your side expulsion, right? I mean, there should be sanctions for it. They did argue too hard for their side, but and also you give you keep the gun grabbers alive, right? You give them a stake. It looks like what they're asking for is legitimate, which it is not, and we should never give any signal that it is.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we've got we definitely have to talk a little bit. I wanted to get your feelings about this whole Fox settling their lawsuit that Dominion had filed against them. $787.5 million. Is that right?
It was about half of what they had.
About half, but I think they sued for what, 1.6 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the cost of litigation, that's the cost of litigation. They decided, don't pay any more. They're not admitting any wrongdoing, right? As I understand it.
Well, I mean, I think they did admit. I think they did in one of the deposition. I mean, they did admit there were some inaccuracies or something or other. I mean, in their official statement, but that's about all. They gave them a little bit, but they didn't give them much.
Right. So they just got off the field. From what I kind of stay out of that aspect of this, right? Because I don't really care what they got in trouble. So the backstory of this is, after the election, there was a lot of viable material to claim that there was fraud in that election. There were, in Pennsylvania, they had, mail-in ballots, more came back than were mailed in. That still hasn't been explained to my satisfaction. Michigan, you had, in Virginia, we had 100,000 votes assigned to Biden that were for Trump. You had to take them away from Biden and give them to Trump, and Biden still won. Michigan, you had, 3 counties have said that, we essentially don't know what we did because of so much fraud in the election. There was stuff out there, right? There was enough out there. And, and to me, it's like they taped the windows, right? They taped the windows in Philly. They taped the windows in Detroit. They taped the windows in Milwaukee. They taped the windows in Atlanta. No one tapes the windows to hide a fair and straight election. 0 people in the history of elections have taped the windows for that reason. So You know, there's a lot to be suspicious about. There's a lot to make a case about. But who emerged as the case makers in the days following the election were, you know, sadly cranks, right? Sidney Powell, Lynn Wood, all these characters, you know, never heard from before, never heard from since, you know, came along with fantastic claims of things that they, you know, we're hearing it was in Italy and China and people were listening in, and, you know, a bunch of stuff that was wild and crazy and couldn't be proven. And I said at the time, like, it's good, you know, there's a good case here that's never going to get made because it's getting drowned out by these nutbags. And that ended up being what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that Fox kind of dug themselves a hole, though, because they did kind of wanted to stay on the Trump side of things, and they allowed a lot of things to be said and going on out there without necessarily, you know, a lot of evidence to prove what they were saying on the air was true. You know,
well, you know, it goes to the, like we were talking about, though, it goes to integrity, right? So if, you know, I think the thing that really hurt them in this, and the thing that they were really afraid of, is that there were the messages between, like, Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham, right? Say, oh, these people are idiots and crazy and crackpots. Okay, if you thought they were crackpots, why'd you put them on your show? You know, find non-crackpots. You know, if you think these guys are crackpots and you give them that microphone, then, you know, you can say you're not endorsing them, but you are, right? You're giving them a voice that they wouldn't have otherwise had.
And this the thing about, you know, news shows, because we know this, you know, I know this from my time at AIM, is just that to get on these shows requires you to be vetted by somebody. They don't just, you know, they don't just see a story and just try to slap you on there. They ask you a bunch of questions. They kind of screen you to make sure that, you know, to do things, you know, and to let a lot of these people on the air. Yeah, all the stuff that Dominion found during the discovery process, all these things was, I think it just showed that, you know, there were some holes there at Fox, you know, and the media, what I find amusing in the end, though, was how the media has been salivating out all of this. They couldn't wait. They couldn't wait to see Tucker, Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, all these people. They're waiting for them to get into the courtroom and to be grilled. And none of this is going to happen now because of this settlement. And Fox didn't want to put their stars up there either. And so the media is like, you know, not only are they talking about this massive settlement and kind of, you know, throwing all these brickbats at Fox, but they're now mad that they didn't get to see these people on the stand. They're furious.
Right. It's like they don't really care that there's nothing to Alvin Bragg's case. They wanted that frog march of Trump.
Yeah.
Right. You know, justice, the heck with justice, right? Just give me my frog march.
Yeah. So, you know, one of the fallout from this too, though, is that I think Smartmatic has got a suit against Fox pending for even more money. So maybe Fox will also pay them just because it's not worth the cost of litigation. Just get, you know, take another pile of money and shove that at them. But the people who are also exposed at this are Mike Lindell, the MyPillow guy, OAN, and Newsmax also have suits pending against them. And I think with Lindell, the Supreme Court said, you know, we're not going to stop this, right? So I think Lindell is in more trouble because he spouted a lot of stuff.
Yeah, but you know, he's also not he can say what he wants. He's a free country.
But right, and it also doesn't stop Dominion from suing him and putting him up there and seeing what happens. So, you know,
my take is they will not settle with Smartmatic. That they'll have that one, that they're in stronger position there.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'll wait and see, because you never can tell with these lawsuits how these things are going to go. Sometimes they'll just cough up the money. Other times they will fight to the death, and we'll just have to wait and see. But that was a huge settlement. All right, we still got a little bit of time here. You know, so we had this crazy teenage mob violence, you know, all this crazy stuff happened in Chicago here. I mean, they went into, you know, like a gas station, they took it up, they had the attendant, and I guess he cowered in the bathroom. I mean, they just ransacked the whole place. There was a couple that got on the air the other day that had been attacked. I mean, this was an interracial couple too, I believe. They got attacked, you know, from this mob. And you have the newly elected mayor. He hasn't taken office yet, but the newly elected mayor is basically says, you know, you can't demonize all these people. It's like, what is it? It's like, okay, Chicago, you have got a problem with your new mayor coming in.
Yeah, you do. And, you know, they're demonizing themselves, buddy. Ain't nothing about us. But yeah, I mean, Chicago's lost. I mean, they had a chance to, they had a guy who was a reformer. I don't know how much reforming he would have done, but that is what he was talking about doing, like more police on the streets, more attention paid to schools. Then you had this guy who's basically a Marxist, right? And he that's who won. So I mean, they chose this. They're going to go down with it. They're going to pay big. They got to get all the way to the bottom. Same with New York, right? I mean, he's essentially given up on fighting mob violence too in his street. So, you just got to stay out of those cities or be careful if you go into them because, the police can't help you. They're,
how can or how does the liberal left defend these cities?
It's unfair to single them out, and they're part of their communities, and if they all taken out of the community, it will hurt the community. It's like, what hurts the community is violent crime. That really hurts the community. Like, get the people who are responsible for the violent crime out, and a lot of good things can happen in the community.
I mean, if this had been white teenagers doing this, would this have been like, oh, white nationalists went in there and did this, and we got to take care of them?
It would have been, yeah.
I could envision that happening, but you've got a bunch of black teenagers that run rampant, and even the mayor-elect's like, no problem.
And you're about to destroy a lot of wealth too.
Yeah,
Chicago for a big city and for what all it's been through, right? There's a lot of wealth there. There's a lot of people with money there doing, running corporations and so forth. But you can't do that if your downtown's not safe.
Right. And I mean, and even though Walmart, said specifically they're not closing the 4 Walmarts because of theft or violence. It's the economics. They weren't making any money. This only adds to this possibility. It's like, all the city leaders in Chicago, have been lamenting this whole thing. It's like, oh, we're going to have this gross, this desert now, the food desert, and all this kind of stuff. It's like, look, you're asking these corporations, even goes back to your point earlier in the program. You want them to basically lose money, lose hundreds of thousands of dollars. This makes no business sense to them to do that. You're not supporting them.
Do it because we need it. Okay, make it work for us. Oh no, we can't do that. Oh well, then we can't do it. I mean, we do this, and they built a lot of those stores. Like the sort of make friends with cities. They did them here too, DC, and they're closing 2 of the 4 in DC too. Right. And they essentially agreed to lose money, right? What they didn't agree is that the rampant thievery and that people who did stuff to them would not be prosecuted. That is what's at the bottom of these closures, is they're a feeling that they're not going to get protected.
Yeah, and they didn't agree to lose money forever either. I mean, if the losses grow, they have to say, okay, all that goodwill, we've done it. We have lost. We tried. We lost $1 million or whatever the money amount is. It's like, we're not losing any more money. So you couldn't make it work. We spent a lot of time and effort to ramp this thing up and do it, and you didn't support it. Right. So that's that, those cities, those men
didn't just not support it. You demonized it. Yeah. And, you stigmatized it, and you called them big, rich, careless corporations, and you crapped on them in every way. And now, well, yeah. And then you were listening to all that stuff. Yeah, we were,
and after you do, who's going to come in there and try that again after you've done it?
You're done with it now.
Right. Absolutely. They're done. They're finished. All right, last 2 minutes. All right, wrap it up, Brian.
Okay, well, we left some pretty good stuff over here.
I made a long list today.
You did. So more efforts to get rid of Clarence Thomas, right? That's probably going to continue until Clarence Thomas himself, they're always going to come up with something. A black guy who does not toe the Democrat Party line. Like you had Tim Scott on here, it's the same thing. They just get enraged about that. Like, don't you understand what you're doing? And it's like, yeah, they fully understand. They understand better than you. That's why they're doing it. The one that I sent you, I don't know. Did you see this thing I sent you?
I did. I didn't reply to you because it's more of an off-air thing that I can say when we go off. I will give you my opinion.
Okay, all right. But I do want to say this: the news part of that is a big story. So what it was about is Mark Elias, who was a He is the Babe Ruth of election lawyers in the country right now. He is the best there is, right? He killed the Republicans on behalf of the Democrats in 2020, 2022. All the election challenges were defeated, almost all of them by Mark Elias, right? So now, he suddenly quit the Democrats. He just, they're like, we don't have anything to do with him anymore. We don't know him anymore. And it's like, okay, something went on there, and it appears to be there may be some financial chicanery that's being uncovered. And, it'll be interesting to see. But they lost a key element there, and I guess he's driven by ideology, so he's never going to come to our side. But if he would, that would be a good guy. Let's go see what he costs to buy. I hate to see the Commanders get sold because I'm in their division as a Cowboys fan, and it's a 4-team division. If you can count on one of the 4 to always be dysfunctional, that really helps your chances of making the playoffs.
Yeah, you're not the first Cowboys fan I've heard say that.
Let's see, what do we have? I guess the home runs due to climate change. I'll tell you what, I think you're going to see a lot of these games. You're seeing a lot of early offense. So usually what happens in baseball is the first time the pitcher goes through the batting order, he's hard to hit, right? They don't score a lot of runs the first 2 or 3 innings in most baseball games, right? Then the second time through, they do a little better. And the third time through, unless he's a really good pitcher and having a really on night, they're ready for him, right? So that's why you get into relief pitchers and so forth. But what you're having now is, pitchers are adjusting to this pitch clock, which is greatly speeding up their aspect of the game, right? They pretty much got to get it, climb back up there and throw it, get it, climb back up there and throw it. And so these guys are not in a rhythm yet. And so you're getting a lot of runs. You're seeing a lot of games that are, 4-4 in the third. Well, that's a different baseball game, right? And that's, and that's part of what's going on there. Climate change. The Earth is not heated in 107 straight months, so that's not causing the home runs.
All right, that we're running out of time, so we're going to wrap it up here by saying thank you, everyone, for joining us again. Please always stay safe and stay healthy. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as we close, God bless America, and we will see you again next week. Hit this button right there.